And today we are tackling something absolutely fundamental. Mental fitness. Not just being smart, but being mentally agile in a world that just won't sit still.
Exactly. We've always been told, haven't we, that intelligence is about your ability to, think and learn, get new information, process it.
Right, the traditional view.
But in the kind of turbulent world we live in now, with change happening so fast, that definition feels, well, incomplete. It's not the whole picture.
So our big idea today, the core question we're digging into, is that maybe the most vital skill now isn't just thinking and learning, but the ability to rethink and, crucially, to unlearn.
To let go of old ideas, assumptions, ways of doing things that just don't fit anymore. Because if you can't do that, even the most brilliant mind can become, well, a bit of a liability. Stuck.
Okay, so our mission for you, listening right now, is to help you turn all this information flying around into something genuinely useful, actionable wisdom.
We're going to unpack why it's so hard to think. Again, those cognitive roadblocks we all hit. And then we'll look at the mindsets you actually need for real mental flexibility.
And we have to start with a story. It's stark, it's tragic, but it perfectly illustrates the ultimate cost of being mentally stuck. Cognitive rigidity. We're talking about Man Gulch, 1949.
Man Gulch, yes. It's a powerful, powerful example. August 5th, 1949, Montana, you've got 15 smoke jumpers. These are the elite firefighters, right? Parachuting into a remote area.
Their job. Contain a forest fire started by lightning. Standard procedure, something they'd trained for endlessly.
Impeccable training. Deeply ingrained responses. Set up a fire line, control the edges, and never, ever drop your heavy tools, your shovel, your axe. That's your lifeline.
That was the script, the standard operating procedure. But nature, especially fire in the mountains, well, doesn't always follow the script, does it?
Not at all. The situation went bad, fast. The wind shifted suddenly, a backdraft. And the fire just exploded across the gulch towards them.
We're talking a wall of flame, maybe 30 feet high, moving incredibly fast, covering something like the length of 2 football fields in under a minute. They were trapped. Fire below, steep, rocky ridge above.
And the foreman, Wagner Dodge, he realized in an instant that their training, their well-learned script, run uphill, keep your gear, it was a death trap. It wouldn't work this time.
It wasn't about physical fitness. These guys were tough. It was their mental script, their ingrained procedure that was the problem.
So Dodge, in this moment of incredible stress, he does something, well, unthinkable, totally against protocol. He pulls out matches.
Matches. During a wildfire.
Yes. He starts another fire, right there in the grass in front of them. An escape fire, he called it later. He quickly burns a small patch, stamps it out, and then yells at his men, "Drop your tools. Lie down here. In the ashes."
Lie down in front of an oncoming inferno. Drop your tools. It sounds insane. Completely illogical based on everything they knew.
It was illogical, counterintuitive. Their whole world was about fighting fire, running from fire, keeping those vital tools. They couldn't process this new idea that a fire could save them fast enough. The hypothesis was too radical.
And the result?
12 of the 15 men. They hesitated. They stuck to the plan, kept running uphill, heavy tools in hand. They were overcome by the fire within minutes.
Found later with their shovels, their axes still clutched tight. They couldn't drop their physical tools, and crucially, they couldn't drop their mental tools, their assumptions about how to survive. A watch found nearby had melted, stopped at 5:56 p.m.
Just horrific. Dodge survived. He lay in the ashes. The main fire roared over him. He couldn't even really explain later why he thought of the escape fire. It was just improvisation under extreme pressure, rethinking on the fly.
And it wasn't just those men, was it? The source material points out the Forest Service itself had this rigid mindset for decades.
Oh, absolutely. The whole institutional identity was built around suppressing all fires. They ignored growing ecological evidence that some fires are natural, even necessary for forest health. Their identity as fire suppressors blinded them.
So the lesson is brutal, but clear. Physical courage, training, expertise. It means nothing without mental flexibility. Dodge survived because he could unlearn instantly.
Which brings us right to part one. Why? Why is it so incredibly hard for us, for humans, to rethink? Even when the evidence, or, a 30-foot wall of flame is staring us in the face. Well, a big part of it is this thing psychologists sometimes call our psychological immune system. It's like our mental defense mechanism. Its job is to protect our ego, our sense of self, our existing worldview.
So it makes us clingy to our old ideas.
Pretty much. We tend to seize onto beliefs, opinions, knowledge we already have, and then we kind of freeze. We prefer the comfort of conviction, as one author puts it, over the discomfort of doubt.
It's funny, isn't it? We spend so much effort updating our stuff, our phones, kitchens, wardrobes. We want the latest tech. But our mental operating system, we often stick with the old version, bugs and all.
It's true. And this resistance shows up in really basic ways, like first instinct fallacy. Remember being told in school, taking a test, stick with your first answer. Don't second guess yourself.
Oh, yeah, definitely heard that. The fear is changing a right answer to a wrong one, right? That feels worse.
Exactly. The potential regret of making a mistake yourself by changing it feels more painful than just getting it wrong the first time. So we avoid rethinking, even on a small scale.
But is that advice actually good advice, sticking with the first instinct?
Well, the data says overwhelmingly, no. A massive review looked at 33 different studies, and in every single one, the majority of answer changes on tests went from wrong to right. People successfully correct themselves far more often than they mess things up by changing.
So we should be second-guessing.
The evidence suggests it's often beneficial. But here's the kicker. Even when students are shown this data, told explicitly, hey, changing your answer is usually good on the next test, they still don't revise more often.
Wow. So it's a really deep-seated resistance.
It really is. A resistance to admitting, even to ourselves, that our initial thought might have been wrong.
And this resistance, it can be even stronger if you're smart, if you're successful, right? Expertise can actually become a trap.
Absolutely. It can lock you into what's called an overconfidence cycle. And the classic business case study here, it's got to be the fall of BlackBerry.
Ah, the BlackBerry. Yeah, they were the smartphone, weren't they, for a while?
Dominant, especially for business, government, secure email, that keyboard. Mike Lazaridis, the co-founder, he was brilliant, an engineering genius who basically created that market.
But that success became the anchor, didn't it?
Completely. He
Yeah.
was anchored to that initial success, that identity. BlackBerry is a secure email device. That's what it is. He fought adding a proper internet browser for years.
Why? That seems crazy now.
He worried it would drain the battery, clog up the network. His focus was totally on preserving that core function, the secure email, the efficiency he valued. He missed the bigger picture,
Which was?
that people didn't just want a secure pager anymore. They wanted a powerful computer in their pocket, a versatile device. He just couldn't rethink the device's fundamental purpose.
And specific things, like messaging.
Yeah, big one.
Yeah.
Around 2010, they essentially walked away from their own instant messaging platform. Didn't see the value. Then along comes WhatsApp, focuses only on that, and eventually sells for, what, $19 billion.
Ouch. A $19 billion missed opportunity because they couldn't rethink.
Exactly. By 2014, BlackBerry's market share was under 1%. Lazaridis was trapped by his own success, his identity as the inventor of the secure business phone. He couldn't adapt.
It's a powerful illustration of how intelligence isn't immunity.
And it leads us neatly into these sort of mental modes or roles we tend to slip into when we're dealing with information, especially when we disagree with someone. Understanding these is key.
Okay, so what are these roles? You mentioned 4 of them.
Right. Think of them as different mindsets we adopt. There's the preacher, the prosecutor, the politician, and the scientist. We slide between them, often without realizing it.
Okay, break those down. What's the preacher mode?
When you're in preacher mode, your core beliefs feel sacred. If someone challenges them, you feel attacked. Your goal is to protect your views, deliver your sermon, maybe convert the other person. Changing your mind feels like weakness, like a moral failing.
And this leads to confirmation bias. Looking for stuff that proves you right.
Exactly. You're defending the faith. Then there's the prosecutor mode. This kicks in when you spot flaws in someone else's argument. Your goal isn't truth, it's winning the case. You marshal arguments to debunk their position.
So being persuaded feels like losing the trial.
Precisely. It triggers what's called desirability bias. You find reasons to reject information you don't want to be true.
Okay, preacher, prosecutor. What about the politician?
The politician mode is all about seeking approval. You tailor your views to win favor with your audience. Your constituents could be your friends, your boss, your online followers. You might flip-flop not based on evidence, but on what's popular or advantageous. It's about image.
I can see how we all fall into these sometimes. So what's the alternative? The scientist.
The scientist mode. This is the one we need to cultivate actively. Here, the goal isn't preaching, prosecuting, or pleasing. It's understanding. It's the pursuit of truth.
So your views aren't sacred texts.
Not at all. They're hypotheses.
Yeah.
Tentative ideas to be tested against evidence. If the data doesn't support the hypothesis, a good scientist doesn't get defensive. They revise the hypothesis. Changing your mind is actually a sign of integrity. It means you're learning.
Does adopting the scientist mindset actually make a difference in the real world? Is there
Well,
proof?
there is a really interesting experiment with Italian startups. Researchers took over 100 new businesses, all sorts, retail, tech, services.
Huh?
They split them randomly. Half got standard support. The other half were trained in scientific thinking.
Yeah.
They were told, treat your business strategy as a theory, your product as an experiment, your customers' reactions as data. Your job is to test your assumptions rigorously.
And the results?
Pretty dramatic. The control group, the ones who just sort of stuck with their initial ideas, they averaged less than $300 in revenue over the next year.
Oof. Not great.
Not great. The scientific thinking group, they averaged over $12,000 in revenue. They pivoted, changed their core ideas almost twice as often. They weren't afraid to say, okay, that hypothesis was wrong, let's try something else. Failure was just data.
Wow. So actively looking for where you might be wrong pays off, literally.
It really seems to. The big takeaway for you listening is, you don't need a lab coat to think like a scientist. It's about that internal shift. Instead of defaulting to finding reasons why you must be right, that's the preacher or prosecutor, consciously look for reasons why you might be wrong. That's the doorway to mental agility.
Okay, so intelligence isn't the answer, and expertise can even be a trap. It breeds this overconfidence that makes us blind to our own blind spots.
Exactly. And to really grasp this kind of self-imposed blindness, there's an extreme neurological condition that's quite revealing. It's rare, but illustrative.
What's that?
It's called Anton syndrome. It happens when someone suffers damage to the visual processing part of their brain, the occipital lobe. They become, for all intents and purposes, blind. But here's the twist. Their brain refuses to acknowledge the blindness.
So they think they can still see, even though they can't.
Precisely. They'll bump into things, fail every vision test, yet insist they can see perfectly fine. Maybe they'll confabulate, make up reasons, oh, it's just dark in here, or I misplaced my glasses.
Like the seamstress, Ursula Merkson, one case study. Constantly bumping into furniture, but absolutely adamant she could see.
Right. She was blind to her own blindness. And that profound lack of awareness about a physical deficit has a cognitive parallel. We see it all the time.
The armchair quarterback syndrome.
You got it. Which brings us directly to the famous, or perhaps infamous, Dunning-Kruger effect.
Ah, yes, Dunning-Kruger. Everyone's heard of it, but what's the core idea again?
The core idea is pretty humbling, actually. It's that when we lack competence in a particular area, we often also lack the ability to recognize our incompetence. So paradoxically, the less skilled you are, the more likely you might be to overestimate your ability.
Ignorance breeds confidence, essentially.
That's the stark summary, yeah. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. The original studies are almost funny. They tested students on things like logic, grammar, even humor recognition. The students who scored the lowest, objectively the worst performers, they consistently, dramatically overestimated their performance. On average, they thought they did better than 62% of their peers.
But in reality,
They only actually outperformed 12%. They were in the bottom quartile, but thought they were above average.
Yeah.
They simply didn't know enough to know how badly they were doing.
and this isn't just in the lab, right? This happens out in the world.
Oh, absolutely. There was a big survey looking at management quality in thousands of companies. Guess where they found the most overconfidence?
Let me guess. Where the management was the worst.
Bingo. Overconfidence was most rampant where management was the poorest. The people doing the worst job were often the most certain they were doing a great job. It's climbing, as they say. Mount Stupid.
You see this in politics too, don't you? Leaders convinced of their brilliance despite evidence to the contrary.
A striking example is Davy Oddsson in Iceland. Prime Minister, then head of the central bank, leading up to the huge financial crash in 2008.
Right. Iceland's collapse was massive.
Devastating. And Oddson's policies, his refusal to regulate the banks, his absolute conviction he knew best, were widely seen as major contributing factors. He was even named globally as one of the 25 people most responsible for the crisis.
Yet, did he rethink? Did he show humility later?
Not really. Years later, he ran for president. And his platform basically ignored the past failures. He said things like, "My experience and knowledge, which is considerable, could go well with this office." Just pure, unadulterated confidence, completely detached from the data. A classic case of competence blindness.
Okay, so that's the danger of overconfidence. What about the flip side? Is there such a thing as underconfidence?
There is, and it's often called imposter syndrome. This is where your actual competence, your skills, exceed your level of confidence. You feel like a fraud, like you don't deserve your achievements, and you're going to be found out.
That sounds unpleasant. Stressful.
It can be very stressful psychologically. But interestingly, in the context of rethinking and learning, it can actually be an advantage.
How so? Feeling like a fraud helps.
Because if you doubt your own knowledge or abilities, what are you more likely to do?
Ask for help. Double check things. Look for more information.
Exactly. It pushes you into scientist mode. You're more likely to seek external input, to learn, to prepare more thoroughly, precisely because you don't trust your own instincts implicitly.
So it makes you more open, more diligent.
It can. There was a study on nurses becoming charge nurses, a leadership role. The nurses who expressed more self-doubt, who felt a bit like imposters taking on the role, they turned out to be more effective leaders.
Why?
Because that feeling of, am I really ready for this, made them actively seek advice and second opinions from their colleagues. They collaborated more, checked assumptions. Their lack of internal certainty led to better collective decisions.
That's fascinating, and it contrasts sharply with Odson.
Perfectly. Think about Hala Tomasdottir, who actually ran against Odson for the Icelandic presidency in 2016. She had a successful background, but she admitted feeling massive imposter syndrome. Who am I to be president, she asked herself.
So how did she handle that doubt?
She weaponized it, in a way. Her uncertainty about having the right tools or experience for a traditional campaign made her incredibly open to new approaches. She embraced social media, Facebook Live Q&As, Snapchat things established politicians weren't doing. She listened intensely.
And she didn't project that arrogance.
Quite the opposite. She ran a really positive, open campaign. Her humility drew people in. And guess what happened on Election Day?
She did well.
She came in second, beat Onsen, the supremely confident former PM who finished a distant fourth. Her self-doubt, coupled with the belief she could learn and adapt, was a strength.
Okay, so we don't want crippling self-doubt, but we also don't want blind overconfidence. What's the sweet spot?
The sweet spot is what Adam Grant calls confident humility. It's a blend.
Confident humility. Explain that.
Okay, so humility is about recognizing you don't know everything. It's being aware of your weaknesses, your knowledge gaps. That's crucial for being open to learning.
Right. Seeing the need to rethink.
But you need to pair that with confidence. Not confidence in your current knowledge or abilities necessarily, but confidence in your capacity to learn. Confidence that you can figure things out, find answers, acquire new skills.
So it's like, I don't know the answer now, but I'm smart enough and capable enough to find it.
Precisely. You're humble about your present state, but confident about your potential. And Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, she's a great example.
Spanx, yeah. Billion-dollar company from basically nothing.
Right. She had tremendous confidence in her idea, footless pantyhose. She believed in it fiercely. That was the confidence part.
But her expertise?
Almost zero. She was selling fax machines door to door, knew nothing about fashion, manufacturing, patents, retail. That was the humility part. She was acutely aware of what she didn't know.
So how did the confident humility work for her?
Because her confidence was in her ability to learn, she wasn't afraid to admit ignorance and ask for help. She literally drove around hosiery mills asking basic questions. She couldn't afford a patent lawyer, so she bought a textbook and figured out how to write her own patent application.
Wow. That combination, belief in the goal, humility about current knowledge, confidence in learning, that was the key.
It seems to be. That confident humility allowed her to navigate a completely unfamiliar industry and build something massive, precisely because she was open and adaptable.
Okay, so rethinking isn't just an internal process. We don't exist in a vacuum. We need others to challenge us, to poke holes in our thinking.
Absolutely. Which means we need to get comfortable with disagreement. We need to actively cultivate what the book calls a challenge network, people who aren't just yes men, but who will push back.
But disagreement can be so unpleasant. Conflict feels bad.
We need to make a critical distinction here. There are different types of conflict. Relationship conflict, personal attacks, dislike, emotional friction that's almost always destructive. It shuts down thinking.
Right. Getting personal never helps.
But task conflict, that's different. That's disagreement about the ideas, the methods, the strategy. Is this the best way to do this? Is that assumption correct? Task conflict, when handled well, is actually constructive.
Constructive how?
It forces us to examine our assumptions, consider alternatives, stress test our plans. Studies showed teams with healthy task conflict are often more creative and make smarter decisions.
So avoiding all conflict isn't the goal.
Definitely not. As someone put it, the absence of conflict is not harmony, it's apathy. If everyone just agrees all the time, bad ideas can linger unchallenged for way too long.
Interesting. And there's even a link to childhood.
There seems to be.
Mm.
Some research suggests highly creative people often grew up in homes that were described as tense but secure, meaning there was friction, parents disagreed openly perhaps, but the underlying environment was safe. Kids learned it was okay to argue, to stand up for their ideas. They developed a tolerance for that constructive wobble.
Okay, so how does this play out in a team setting, like at work?
Think about Pixar. Brad Bird, directing The Incredibles. It was hugely ambitious technically. People told him parts of his vision were just impossible with the current technology.
So what did he do? Give up on the vision?
No. He deliberately built a challenge network. He sought out people he called his pirates, animators, engineers, who were known to be a bit disagreeable, maybe disgruntled, dissatisfied with the status quo,
Yeah.
people who wouldn't just nod along.
He invited the friction.
He did. He gave them explicit permission, maybe even an obligation to challenge assumptions, to question standard procedures. And that task conflict led to breakthroughs.
Like what?
Well, for instance, digitally simulating realistic muscle movement under clothing was incredibly expensive and complex. The pirates pushed back, forced a rethink. They ended up using simpler, stylized oval shapes for character muscles, an innovative, cheaper solution born directly from that constructive disagreement.
And the result for the film?
The Incredibles came out. It was Pixar's most complex film ever at that point. And yet, it cost less per minute to make than their previous films. The Challenge Network drove innovation and efficiency.
So the takeaway is, seek out people who challenge your thinking. Don't just surround yourself with those who agree.
Exactly. We learn far more from our thoughtful critics than from our cheerleaders.
Okay, so that's building the network. What about when you're actually in a disagreement, a debate? How do you make it constructive, not destructive?
You have to shift your mindset. Think of it less like a battle to be won and more like a dance. It requires adopting that scientist mode even when engaging with someone you disagree with.
A dance, not a battle. I like that. What does that look like in practice, like for negotiators?
Research on skilled negotiators is really insightful here. They found that the best negotiators spent over a third of their planning time actively looking for areas of potential common ground with the other side.
As opposed to just planning their attacks.
Right? Average negotiators mostly just rehearse their own arguments. The skilled ones anticipated objections, yes, but also proactively identified points where they might actually agree or concede.
And during the negotiation itself?
They used way more questions than statements. They showed curiosity. And they weren't afraid to make concessions on minor points.
Concessions, but doesn't that mean you're losing?
In a battle, yes. But in a persuasive dance, agreeing with a valid point your opponent makes is incredibly powerful. It does two things. One, it signals you're not just a preacher or prosecutor stuck in your own view. You're a scientist willing to acknowledge truth wherever you find it.
Okay, so it builds trust.
Exactly. And two, it makes the other person more psychologically open to hearing your perspective. You've shown you can listen and agree, now they're more likely to reciprocate. But it's a specific kind of concession that works best.
Which brings us to something you mentioned earlier, the logic bully trap. I have to admit, I've probably fallen into that one myself.
Well, I think many of us have. You'd think, if I just present enough facts, enough logical points, airtight reasoning, they'll have to agree.
Right. Yeah, drum and data.
But what usually happens...
Yeah, dig in deeper. Get defensive, shut down, it backfires. I was acting like a prosecutor, and it just made them put up their shields.
Exactly. It triggers their psychological immune system. Which is why the insight from champion debaters like Harish Natarajan is so crucial. He realized something profound about how we argue.
What was his insight?
He found that arguing about why people hold their beliefs, attacking their reasons, their values, their identity, usually just makes them cling tighter to those beliefs. It reinforces the preacher-prosecutor stance.
Okay, so don't attack the why. What do you do instead?
You shift the focus to how. Ask questions about how their proposed solution would actually work in practice. How would the policy be implemented? How would we get from A to B? How would you explain this mechanism to an expert?
Focusing on the mechanics, the practicalities.
Yes. Because when people are forced to explain the how, they often discover gaps in their own understanding. It reveals complexity, uncertainty. It moves them away from emotional conviction towards more rational, analytical thinking. It tempers extremism.
Can you give an example? Natarajan used this, right?
He did, famously, in a debate about government subsidies for preschool. Going in, audience support for the subsidies was really high, like 79%.
Okay. So how did he apply the how strategy?
Instead of attacking the why preschool is good for kids, it helps equality, etc., he started asking how. Okay, How exactly would this money reach the poorest families who need it most? How specifically would this subsidy translate into lower crime rates years later? How do we ensure quality control so the money isn't wasted on bad programs?
So he poked holes in the practical application.
Precisely. He exposed the logistical hurdles, the potential unintended consequences, the sheer complexity of making it work effectively. He wasn't saying preschool was bad. He was questioning whether this specific plan was well thought out.
And the effect on the audience.
Support for the subsidy dropped significantly, down to 62%. He didn't change their core values, but he made them rethink the specific solution by focusing on the how. He engaged their analytical brains, not just their identity shields.
That's subtle but powerful. Okay, so focusing on how is one tool. What about just listening better?
That might be the ultimate tool, actually, using techniques often grouped under motivational interviewing.
Motivational interviewing, what's the goal there?
The goal is to help others find their own reasons for change. It's about guiding them to self-discovery, not telling them what to do. And crucially, it means resisting what's called the righting reflex.
A writing reflex?
Yeah, that urge we all have to jump in and fix someone else's problem for them, to tell them the right way. Motivational interviewing says, resist that urge. Your job is to listen, understand, and help them explore their own motivations and ambivalence.
How do you do that? What are the techniques?
Key techniques include asking open-ended questions, not yes/no, using reflective listening, summarizing or paraphrasing what they said to show you understand, affirming their strengths and positive intentions, and summarizing the conversation to highlight their own change talk.
Change talk?
Yeah, moments where they express a desire, ability, reason, or need to change. You gently highlight and encourage that.
Wait, it sounds like it requires a lot of patience.
It does, but it can be incredibly effective, especially with deeply resistant people. Consider the vaccine whisperer story. Dr. Arnaud Godnier, a neonatologist.
Right, dealing with a mother, Marie-Helene, who was terrified of vaccinating her premature baby.
Exactly. Other doctors had just preached the science at her, told her she had to vaccinate, which predictably just made her more resistant, prosecutor mode engaged.
So what did Dr. Godnier do differently?
He just listened. For over an hour. He asked open-ended questions about her fears, her hopes for her child. He affirmed her core motivation. I can see you want what's absolutely best for your baby. You're clearly a very caring mother. He built trust before talking science.
He didn't try the writing reflex.
No, he waited. He let her ask the questions about the science based on her fears. Then he answered those specific questions calmly, respectfully. He guided her to her own conclusion by respecting her autonomy.
And it worked.
It worked. She chose to vaccinate not only that baby, but her older kids too, and even encouraged her siblings. She said later, he respected my decision. Just that sentence. To me, it was worth all the gold in the world. Listening built the bridge.
Amazing. And this isn't just for medical stuff.
Not at all. Look at Daryl Davis, the black musician who famously befriended Ku Klux Klan members.
How on earth did he do that?
Pure curiosity and listening. He didn't show up preaching or prosecuting. He approached them with genuine, open-ended questions, the main one being, how can you hate me when you don't even know me?
He tried to understand their how and why.
Exactly. He listened to their stories, their backgrounds. He found their hatred was often based on abstract stereotypes and family history, not actual experience. His persistent, non-judgmental curiosity forced them to confront the gap between their beliefs, hypotheses, and reality data.
And many of them actually left the KKK because of him.
Over 200, reportedly. His listening, his refusal to meet hate with hate, allowed them the space to rethink their deepest identities. It shows the profound power of genuine, persuasive listening.
Okay, we've talked about individual and interpersonal rethinking. What about bigger societal issues? Things that get really polarized, like gun control or abortion. How do we escape those deadlock situations?
Well, conventional wisdom often says we need to break out of our filter bubbles, expose people to the other side's arguments. But research from the Difficult Conversations Lab at Columbia suggests the problem might be deeper.
Deeper how?
The problem might be the very act of framing these issues as having only two sides. This triggers what they call binary bias.
Binary bias, meaning we oversimplify.
Exactly. Our brains love simplifying complex realities into neat opposing categories. Left versus right, pro versus con, us versus them. The moment an issue is framed that way, A versus B, it pushes us into preacher or prosecutor mode. We pick a side, defend it, and stop thinking critically.
So presenting both sides might actually be part of the problem if it reinforces that binary.
It seems so. The lab did an experiment. They had people discuss gun control. One group read an article framing it the standard way, two opposing sides. Afterwards, they tried to find common ground on a different polarizing issue, abortion.
And could that?
Only 46% of pairs managed to find any consensus on abortion after discussing the binary gun control frame.
Okay, what was the other condition?
The other group read an article with the same core facts about gun control, but it was framed differently. Instead of two sides, it presented the issue as a complex web of maybe 4 or 5 interrelated dilemmas, or a spectrum of 6 different viewpoints that complexified the issue.
Highlighting the shades of gray, the nuances.
Exactly. And the result? After reading the complexified gun control article, when those pairs discussed abortion, 100% of them found some common ground.
100%, that's incredible. Why such a huge difference?
Because complexifying the first issue seemed to break their overconfidence cycle. They saw nuance was possible. When they turned to the second issue, they asserted fewer opinions. They asked more questions. They approached it more like scientists exploring complexity, less like warriors defending a position.
So fighting polarization might mean deliberately showing the complexity, not just the two poles.
It's a really promising approach. Framing climate change, for instance, not just as believers versus deniers, but showing the 6 distinct camps identified by researchers from alarmed to dismissive, reveals that the vast majority are actually somewhere in the middle, concerned and potentially movable. It breaks the false dichotomy.
This need for flexibility, for avoiding rigid categories, it applies to our personal lives too, right? Especially careers.
Oh, definitely. Here we run into another cognitive trap, escalation of commitment.
Escalation of commitment. That sounds like digging yourself deeper into a hole.
Pretty much, it's doubling down on a failing plan or path, not because it makes sense going forward, but because you've already invested so much time, money, or ego into it. Sunk costs. You need to justify your past decisions, so you keep going, even when evidence says pivot.
And qualities we normally admire, like grit or perseverance, can actually make this worse.
They absolutely can. Grit is great when you're on the right path. But if you're gritting your teeth and stubbornly sticking to a path that's clearly wrong for you, grit becomes foolish stubbornness. Your internal politician is saying, I can't quit now, I've invested too much, what will people think?
I saw this with a family member, actually, my cousin Ryan. He went into neurosurgery.
Wow, that's a long, tough road.
Incredibly long, 16 years of training, residency, grueling. But deep down, he had doubts almost the whole way. Burnout, questioning if it was really his dream or more the family's expectation.
Sounds like a potential case of identity foreclosure.
What's that exactly?
It's when you settle on a sense of self, an identity. I am a neurosurgeon. Too early, too rigidly, often based on external pressures, without fully exploring other possibilities. You foreclose on exploring other potential selves. The common question, what do you want to be when you grow up, kind of encourages this fixed mindset.
Right, so Ryan felt locked in. I am this thing I've spent 16 years becoming.
Exactly. The sunk cost felt enormous. Quitting seemed unthinkable, a massive waste, a failure. So he escalated his commitment, finished the residency.
But was he happy?
No. He admitted later he deeply regretted not pivoting much sooner. He eventually did leave clinical practice and moved into health tech, which suited him better, but he lost years to that escalation, that identity foreclosure.
It shows how dangerous that fixed identity can be. We need to see ourselves as works in progress.
Always. Which leads to a really practical strategy suggested in the source material. Schedule a regular life checkup.
Like a doctor's appointment, but for your life path.
Kind of, yeah. Maybe twice a year. Deliberately set aside time to review your big aspirations, your career trajectory, your core identity assumptions. Ask yourself tough questions.
Like what?
Like, when did I originally form this dream or goal? How have I changed since then? Is it still the right fit for who I am now? Am I doing this for me or to please my constituents? Have I hit a learning plateau in my current role? Am I just optimizing old skills or am I genuinely growing?
Taking stock, basically. Being a scientist about your own life.
Exactly. And another key point here, when you're seeking change or more happiness, be careful where you focus. We often think changing our surroundings is the answer. New city, new job, new relationship.
The geographic cure.
Right. But the boost from a new environment is often temporary. The research suggests lasting happiness and meaning come more from changing our actions, building purpose through what we contribute, developing mastery, rethinking how we engage with the world, rather than just where we are.
So internal shifts and behavioral changes matter more than external ones in the long run.
That seems to be the case. Which brings us full circle, really, to leadership. How do leaders navigate collective uncertainty and turbulence?
Not by pretending to have all the answers based on what we've discussed.
Definitely not. The best leaders in turbulent times aren't the ones with the most rigid, confident vision. They're the ones who model that scientific approach, that confident humility.
Like FDR during the Great Depression.
A prime example. The country was in chaos. Nobody had a guaranteed fix. Roosevelt didn't pretend he did. He famously said in 1932, and this became his philosophy, it is common sense to take a method and try it. If it fails, admit it frankly and try another. But above all, try something.
Bold, persistent experimentation.
That's the essence of it. He treated policies like hypotheses, he admitted uncertainty, he learned from failures, he pivoted, he modeled the scientist mode for the whole country.
So what we need most in uncertain times isn't a leader who knows the future, but one who knows how to learn and adapt and gives everyone else permission to do the same.
Exactly. A leader who embodies confident humility and makes rethinking a collective norm, not a sign of weakness. #outro.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this up, this deep dive really drives home that rethinking isn't some innate gift. It's a skill. It's a mindset.
Yeah. And it seems the best way to cultivate it is to stop treating our knowledge and beliefs like precious treasures to be guarded and start treating them more like hypotheses to be tested. Constantly.
Letting go of the need to be right and embracing the process of getting closer to right. Less preacher, more scientist.
Precisely. If there's one core idea to take away, maybe it's that while our instinct is often to run from the discomfort of doubt, it's actually leaning into curiosity, embracing that humility that prevents the really big mistakes, whether you're running a country or just navigating your own life.
And think about that data point. The best forecasters, the ones who were consistently most accurate. They didn't just rethink once. They updated their predictions, on average, 4 times for each question they tackled.
4 times. Not just making an adjustment, but really iterating their thinking.
So here's a challenge for you listening. What's one area, one core belief you hold, maybe a relationship dynamic, a career assumption? What's one thing you'd be willing to genuinely re-examine, maybe update, let's say 4 times over the next year?
It's an invitation, really, to prioritize your own mental agility. Maybe actually schedule that life checkup we talked about. Keep asking yourself and others how things work, not just why you believe them.
Absolutely. Well, this has been incredibly insightful. If you found this deep dive valuable, if it sparked some rethinking for you, do us a favor and hit that like button and definitely subscribe. It helps us keep bringing this kind of actionable wisdom straight to you.